When I was a teenager, a movie came out called The Matrix. Now, I'm not going to tell you what it's about because I'm sure you've seen it or heard of it. The choices that you had, the red pill or the blue pill. And we are faced with a choice today. Does God really exist? Do we believe in a God that created, that exists today? Or do we believe that things will happen by chance, created maybe a big bang that took place? Now, we call those theories. Because they take a bit of faith, a bit of belief. And what I want to explore is a little bit around this, but who is God? Well, we last week established what the Bible is and how we can trust in the Bible. Well, the Bible started off by saying in Genesis, in the beginning was God, ... Was God. God existed. And so we have to make a decision. Do I believe that things just happen by chance? Because if I believe that things happen just by chance, it means there's no real control, there's no real massive order, there's no real purpose. I just exist because it happened. So for instance, my cell phone, you know what, the cell phone here is incredible. It can do photos, emails, WhatsApp calls, all sorts of things. It can even take phone calls and pictures and incredible. And then one day I was just walking along and it just happened. I just had my hand out and the phone just popped into my hand. It was there. Didn't do anything for it, just took place. Now I know you're probably laughing at me and thinking I'm ridiculous, because there was a designer involved in it, there was thought, there was a whole process that was there. But that's what we're faced with. A decision, do I believe that God exists or do I not? Well, let's explore if God exists. We see if God exists, we see nature is calling out for it. In fact, the mere question that you have got is, does God exist? Had to come from somewhere. So that comes from somewhere. Someone had to place that in your mind. In fact, you see creation is echoing that all the time. Romans 1 verse 21 says this, although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God, nor gave thanks to him, but in their thinking became futile, because their foolish hearts were darkened. So it says here, the assumption is that they knew God. Something in us already gives us that question, is there a God? Well, creation is continuously echoing, there is a God, there is a God. Go by the beach, and you just watch those waves crashing. You watch how the perfect order, the fact that if the sun was 1 degree closer to the earth, we would burn to death, or 1 degree further, we would freeze to death. So there must be somebody. There must be a God. It's such incredible order. Now I want to tell you about a beetle called the bombarder beetle. And this beetle, what it does is it's got two chemicals. And through these glands pushes out these chemicals like a proxy that blend in a chamber. And as it spews this liquid out, that liquid leaves that beetle's body by 100 degrees Celsius. Incredible. Now, if this thing had to evolve through macroevolution, how could those two chemicals just mix? They can't mix together. What stops this beetle from just exploding, combusting in itself? We see some form of creation. So we're faced with that choice. Do we believe in a God that exists, that created? Because then our response is realizing that there's a purpose and there's an order. There's something happening. Or do we take the choice of it just happened? So let's explore more, because if we believe in a God existing, what now? So we make the decision to follow God, and that takes us a faith step. Well, the next kind of question we explore is, does God really have involvement in our lives? Is he involved in the earth? Or is he just like watching a chess game? He's absent, he's distant. Well, we've got the decisions. Do we believe in a God that is involved in our lives or not? Well, what does the Bible say? Jeremiah 9 verse 24 says this, but let the one who boast about this, that they have understanding to know me, that I am the Lord, who exercises kindness, justice, righteousness on the earth. For in these I delight, declares the Lord. So the Bible is full of references of God involved in the lives of his people, not distant, not playing like a puppeteer, but involved. Isaiah 43, I love what it says. It says, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name, and you are mine. I know your name. A God that knows your very, very name, knows all about you. We're told about a God that knows the amount of hairs on our head. Now, I've gained a few more this side, but not on that side. But he knows how many. God who is intimately involved. What do you believe in that? Because a God that's intimately involved, we need to look at his character. Because that has influence. Because if I believe that a God is just distant and not involved, well, then I'm kind of living for myself. I'm just doing my thing. I'm just plodding along. But if God is involved, then there's a purpose, there's a plan, there's something that needs to happen if they've got a God involved. So in order to discover this, we need to look a little bit more about his character. A little bit of things about God. And I'm hoping to take you through this quick journey around that. And I hope that it desires for you to connect with more. Well, firstly, God is independent. We need to know this, that God did not need to make us. He doesn't need us. He's not lonely. We're told that among the Trinity there's fellowship. God didn't need to create us. He doesn't need us for anything. He's not reliant or dependent on us whatsoever. We serve an independent God. Now that's a bit of a hard pill to swallow, because what's that about? Well, we need to let that humble us. Because a God who doesn't need us still chooses to love us, still chooses to be involved in our very lives, still chooses to work through us. How incredible is that? Because that should have influence on how we act. Well, what else? Well, let's go and venture on a few more things about God. We find out that God is independent. He doesn't need us. Yet we go on further in Isaiah 43. It goes on further to say that we're created for his glory. And that means we have purpose, we have value. You know, if I own something, it's mine. You know, I love my cell phone. It's precious and I take care of it. I treasure it because it belongs to me. Well, so in Isaiah, you are mine. We find our sense of value, our worth, because God doesn't need us, but he wants us. And how incredible is that? So God is independent, not needed of us. But God has always existed. And that blows my mind. I can't fully understand that. And one day I think we will reveal it. I think our minds can't comprehend that fully. Why? Well, if we can fully understand something, doesn't it mean that we are greater or more intelligent than them? So if we really serve a powerful, almighty, powerful God, then surely we're going to have questions about him. How did you really get there? And we can't have full comprehension. It just means that he's greater. But what I love to share about with God has always existed. It's like my wedding ring here. You can't find the start of it. You can't find the end of it. Like sellotape over Christmas time. Trying to find the start of a sellotape is almost impossible sometimes. Well, God has always been there. See, God created time, and time has rules. Time tells me that I need to be born, and one day I'll die. I was born at a very young age. Well, that's what time does. And if God created time, is he bound by those rules? He's not. So God has always existed. But not only has he existed, God is also not changing. God doesn't change. And this is so important to hear. In fact, in Malachi, it turns around and says, I, the Lord, do not change. Why? Well, it's key, because what if God kept on changing his mind? How will I never know that I've done enough? You appear before heaven one day and Jesus says to you, why should I let you into heaven? And you say, well, I believed in you. I believe that you died on the cross for me. I believe that you were the ultimate sacrifice and took my sins. And Jesus turns around and says, oh, that's yesterday. Today I've changed my mind. Wouldn't that be terrible? So God doesn't change. And we need that in a world that seems to be continuously changing and inconsistent and never knowing. We can rest assured that God doesn't change. That should have incredible influence on us. So God has always existed. Not only has he always existed, but God's presence is with us. He's ever present. So that means that God is with us. As Christians, we can never ever be alone. How incredible is that? Is the fact that God goes with us. Now, I remember going through a scary part of town once, and because my cousins were with me and my uncle, And they were bouncers. They were big, staunch guys. And I remember them walking alongside me. I felt like I could walk down that scary street. Not because I was strong myself, but because of who I was with. Well, God is everywhere. And He's with us. And not just everywhere. This is the mind-blowing things. The fullness of who God is here. So how do we know? When people turn around and say, I can really sense the presence of God, what does that mean? Does that mean that God is here in South Africa but not in Australia? Well, no, He's everywhere. But God manifests Himself. He reveals Himself when we worship. When we come to places where we acknowledge Him as King, and there's moments where we can just be really a sense of being aware that God is with us. Well, that should bring us incredible joy. Because David turns around and says in Psalm 139, where can I flee from your presence? Where can I go? He just realizes that God is incredible. God is everywhere. And that should fill us as Christians with incredible joy. I don't need to face loneliness because God is with me. I don't need to be scared about things. I can face peace no matter what I'm going through. Even in that maths exam that you may be writing, God is with me. He's in my presence. I'm in His presence. And so we are aware of Him. Not only is God everywhere, but God is also all-knowing. Nothing catches God by surprise. As we spoke about, God is not time-bound. Well, He knows what's happened in the past. He knows what's even happening in the future. And yet He knows what's in the present. And so we can rely on Him. We can say, God, I want to trust You because You know what's best. You know the answers. You know even the pain that have been caused. You know what's even caused people to hurt me. You even know their hearts because You're a righteous judge. You know what's going on. And we can trust in Him as being all-knowing, going with us. So how does this influence us? Well, there's so many other characteristics of God that we can look at. God is love. God is wise. God is also holy. And so if we're called to reflect who God is, to mirror who God is, well, we're called to be holy. A holy people set apart. Now, we make mistakes, and I know we mess up. I've just messed up. That's why you see an edit. But isn't it incredible that God sent His Son to die for us so that we can know Him? And surely, if we know Him and He's forgiven us, we don't do things out of to get salvation, to come to know a holy God. We do things because of what God has done, in response to what He's done. So I want to live a holy life. I mess up. But my desire is to really reflect His holiness in my life. Well, this surely is not all the characteristics of God. No, there's so many more. But what I want to challenge on, if we believe that God exists, it means that we weren't just created by chance, but there's a plan, there's a divine creator. And if we believe that He's involved in our lives, and that He wants to personally know us, and He wants us to personally know Him, well, then our character changes, because we're told in the Bible that we're made in the image of God. We actually are supposed to mirror who God is through our very lives. So how does that impact? Well, God is loving, and so therefore we can know love. We can experience love, and therefore we should be loving. As the commandments are, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul. Well, we can love and we can reveal God's love through our lives. God is faithful. Are we as His people faithful? Do we mirror that image of who God is? God is wise. Isn't it incredible as Christians we can seek His wisdom? And we can help others out. Solomon prayed for wisdom and God granted it. And we can know His wisdom in this and reflect it. So many of our characters need to reflect who God is. Well, how do we do that? As a teenager, we run around trying to find our identity, our social identity, our physical identity. But the truth is, if you really want to know who you are, you've got to know whose you are. We belong to a loving God. Seek God, and that will be revealed through your life. Have a blessed week, and look forward to having you back next week as we explore what is the Trinity.